The Boundless Authenticity podcast presents to you the Portal to Ascension series. The Portal to Ascension conference will be held April 21st to 23rd, 2023 at Marina Village Conference Center, San Diego, California. After 3 years of a collective dark night of the soul, the Portal to Ascension conference is returning live and in person and is fully activated for the mission ahead of us all. As energy continues to shift and hidden truths are being uncovered, we are piecing together the fragmented parts of our existence to create awareness of the truth of who we are and remember our connection to the cosmos. This event is all about deprogramming ourselves from the outdated matrix system and remembering who we truly are at the core. Discover ancient origins, uncover hidden truths, and recover your true identity with guest speakers Alan Steinfeld, JJ and Desiree Hertok, Linda Moulton Howe, Robert Schock, Caroline Corey, Robert Edward Grant, Barbara Lamb, Michael Cremo, Ra of Earth, Adam Apollo, Neil Gar, Joan of Angels, John Block, Deborah Gusty, Michelle Anderson, Eric Rankin, Geraldine Orozco, Shareya Dharma, Laurie Wheeler, Torcom G, Lori Spania, Tangela, Jenna Layden, Sheila Seppi, Larissa Stowe, Fox Angeles, Stargate Experience, and Share the Light. Get tickets at ascensionconference.com. On this episode, I talk with Sheila Seppi. Sheila Seppi is a soul exchange walk-in. She entered into the body of a 38-year-old mother with 3 children and was immediately healed from documented illnesses and took on a new personality with spiritual gifts and memories she didn't even believe in. Her life was transformed and she has never been the same. Sheila is an author, speaker, multidimensional life coach, healer, regression therapist, and teacher. She obtained her bachelor's degree in metaphysics and master's degree in metaphysical sciences from the University of Metaphysical Sciences in California and is currently working on her PhD in metaphysics. She is the founder of SpiritWay Ministries, which serves as a catalyst for focused body, mind, spirit healing and transformation on an individual and group basis, and to help prepare humanity for the Ascension and New Earth. You can find Sheila at SheilaSeppi.com. So Sheila, how's it going?
It's great. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic.
Awesome.
All right. So I am grateful to be talking with you. Go ahead and tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Okay. Well, my name is Sheila Seppi. I am I'm a walk-in, which we'll talk about here in just a few moments, but also I am an author. I wrote the book Walk-Ins, The Cosmology of the Soul. I am an international speaker. I'm a multidimensional life coach. I'm a healer. I'm a regression therapist. I'm a teacher. I have a variety of courses that I offer to people. I do one-on-one sessions, but a lot of what I do are sessions about the soul, if you will, help people to integrate, to come into the energy of who they truly are as a soul. And I have programs where I work with people to reconnect their energetic ley lines of the body. And I was in a session one day when one of my Arcturians that I work with kind of stepped back. And then I had an angelic and an Andromedan that came in, and they began showing me this different type of healing modality that I hadn't seen before. And so they said, okay, now we want you to go back through your notes, and they were giving me this instruction manual to do. And basically what they told me is, I'm going to teach you how to reconnect the ley lines of the body. And I'm like, oh, you mean the meridians? And they're like, no, the ley lines. And I found that extremely fascinating because I think when people come in or people have trauma, some of those energetic conduits get disconnected within our energetic bodies, within our chakras, etc. And for me, I had all of mine reconnected when I came in as a walk-in, and that occurred in the fall of 1999. I entered into the body of a 38-year-old lady with 3 children. She was very, very sick, had bone cancer, brain tumors, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, used to walk with a cane, had erythema nodosum and sarcoidosis, and you name it. And the body was being plagued with it. However, when the new soul came in, that energy instantaneously healed the body. Now, I didn't know it at the time. And at the time, I had no idea that I was a walk-in. And if anyone had said, hey, you're a walk-in, I would have laughed them out of the room, because the night before, when I went to bed, a very sick person, I did not even believe in past lives. And what happened to me was the next morning, it felt like someone reached down, grabbed me by the hair of the head, pulled me bolt right up in bed, and it was like lightning ran through my body, and then I was in white space. And I don't know how long I was in that white space, but while I was there, I was out of pain. I was very comfortable. I felt unconditional love. And to be quite honest, if I had never left that place, I think I would have been quite happy staying there. However, what happened is my peripheral vision started coming in, and then my frontal vision. And as I sat there in the bed, the first thing, of course, going through my mind is, what the heck am I doing sitting up in bed? And then all of a sudden, I started having all these memories of past lives and of universal things I had never studied before. I started remembering healing modalities and universal truths, and was having sacred geometry and all these things going through my mind. And I had never even studied those before, nor did I have an interest in them. And so when I got up to go to the restroom and I passed the mirror on the wall, I just stopped. And I was mesmerized, because it was if I was looking out of someone else's eyes at my own body. And had this thing not happened to me, I would not believe that such a thing could occur, because, I don't know about you, but I wasn't raised learning about walk-ins. You lived, you died, you went to heaven, you went to hell, you did the best you could in between, and that was about it. I was never told, nor did my parents know about alternate realities, nor did they know about multiple universes or the various layers of an oversoul. They didn't know that it was possible for one soul to slip out of the body and another soul to come in. And so I'm what is called a soul exchange walk-in, literally meaning one soul out and another soul in. But there's other types of walk-ins as well. And when I was writing my book and doing the research, I'll be honest, I thought everybody was going to have an experience just like mine, because I had never read a single book. And to this day, I've never read anything. 23 years later, I've never read a single book about a walk-in. After I wrote mine, I didn't even read it again. It's like I just didn't. And one of the things that I found that was fascinating, there's what's called a soul infusion, where more and more of a person's higher self or their actual aspects from their oversoul come into the body and merge with their soul. And then there's what's called a braided soul, where you can actually have 2 aspects of a soul in a body. And then there's what's called not the overlay or the braided soul. There's the jumpers, and the jumper, that's when like one soul comes in and one soul goes out on a very short-term basis. Now, that soul that pops in can be there for a couple hours, it can be there for a couple days, etc. But it always leaves and is always short-term. And the people who had experienced those types of experiences said that after the soul was gone, that they really missed it, that they could feel like this void. Because when a jumper soul or any other type of soul enters into the body, that vibrational frequency is so much higher than what the regular body has, that it really shifts and changes the molecular structure of the body itself. And like in my case, I entered into a very, very sick body. And so there were aspects that had to come in that were compatible with that body, kind of like a slow drip to come in. But even that slow drip of the soul coming in was enough that it eradicated all of the illness. So when I went to the doctor, they were like, we don't know. We don't have any explanation for this. And they were actually dumbfounded. But not everyone's experience is like mine. And like I said, when I wrote the book and I heard about all these different types of souls, I was really, really mesmerized. And, my guides are like, well, a true walk-in is when the one aspect leaves and another aspect comes in. And these other experiences that I was writing about, they told me literally are soul experiences. Who knew? Who knew that you could have more of your higher self come in? Who knew that you could have an aspect leave and another aspect come in? Or through trauma, you could have multiple aspects of your soul to wake up with memory, and each one of them operating just as strongly as the other one. In the case of a braided soul, a lot of times you have one soul that comes to the front while the other one subsides. And so you really have, it's kind of like a dance of the souls. They just sort of, weave in and out from each other. But what happened to me was not like that. It literally was a totally different soul. And immediately I had a personality change, actually began to even look differently. All of my behaviors were different. The music I'd listened to was different. The way that I dressed, I did not have attachment to anyone except for my children and for my parents. And within 3 months, I had left the marriage that I was in because there was just no compatibility, even though the body was the same body, because you get kind of a used car with all these memories and everything that's already imprinted into the cellular structure. When I came in, a lot of that was blown out. And even to this day, I do not have full memory recall. Now, I was gifted a few cool memories of, like, my children being born and special birthdays and a few things like that. But I don't have even, memories of the pregnancy. And so that really bothered me. And initially, I thought I was having a psychotic break. I thought that between the illnesses, the dysfunctional marriage, working, all those kinds of things, it had just gotten to me and I had just lost it, because my background was in psychology and a psychotic break made perfect sense to me. But the thing about psychotic breaks or any type of mental illness, there's really a huge difference because a lot of people at first said, well, you did have a mental break, or this happened, or you've been demon possessed, or, they gave me this whole big list of things that possibly could be what happened. But the reality of it is there was a new aspect of this soul. Well, not a new aspect of this soul. There was a new soul that came in as the old aspects were leaving. And as I have continued to work with my guides, they were saying that actually, typically what happens is a soul enters in through the top of the head, and then upon death, it exits through the top of the head. But in my case, when this new soul came in with such a vigor, it propelled the other soul out through the chest. And that's what caused me to be in that bolt right up position. And so the things that I know now, if I had come in with that knowledge then, I would not have believed it.
Wow. So to answer your question, yes, I have heard of walk-ins before. But the first time I heard of it I was actually reading Ancient Secret Flower of Life by June Velo Melchizedek, for anybody that
Yes,
hasn't read
and
that
he's a
book.
walk-in.
Yeah, but he never really went into detail as to what it was. He was like, oh, by the way, I'm a walk-in.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes along about his business. He doesn't really explain what it is. So my question here is, how does this happen? Is there some kind of a contract that is made prior to the original soul being in the body to say, okay, this thing is going to happen and I'll tag you in, so to speak, later on? Like, we'll just high five and I'll get out of here, you know?
That does actually happen. There are what's called pre-birth plans that everyone has. And each one of us also have a variety of exit strategies, so that if we think we have learned our lessons by age 6, it might be that we would have an illness that would take us out at that age. Or we might have an automobile accident and that would take us out, or whatever. So there are various exit points throughout the life. Now, everyone has these strategies, and in some cases, there are souls who make these arrangements many, many years in advance about switching. In my case, what happened, however, is this soul was very, very sick, and it was about to really expire. But the body was salvageable. Now, if that's not crazy enough, let me go into a little bit something that might be a little more crazy. The way that I actually entered into the body is I am part of what's called a collective of souls. And we had already merged our consciousness. I was at the state where I no longer had physical form and had merged my consciousness with other beings. And we were like lower 7th density beings. Now, when you work up to the 8th, then it's like Gaia, who then places her consciousness into a planet. But with us being 7th density, we were in the Andromedan system, and we heard a cry or a vibration or some kind of a resonance come up from Gaia, asking for assistance. Now, Dolores Cannon, in her books, I found out later, call that the 3 waves of volunteers. And so we would have come in probably as that second wave of volunteers, because we entered into the earth plane around the 1980s. And what we did was entered into that crystalline grid of the planet. Now, the crystalline grid of the planet is an etheric structure. It goes all the way around. There are all kinds of nodules that come together. It kind of looks like a honeycomb structure. And in between, what holds those honeycombs together is not that sticky, gooey honey wonderfulness, but it's a crystalline grid. And we were working within that crystalline grid. And beneath that crystalline grid is what is called the collective consciousness of humanity. And so we were beaming into the collective consciousness awakening light codes. We were beaming in their unconditional love and, different codes to help people to awaken. And so when this soul cried out to be released, there really was not a plan in place, but it was decided because of the like resonance, which I'll explain, that I would be the aspect that would enter into the body. Now, when I say a like resonance, we all have an oversoul, and there are many, many, many layers to our oversouls as we come down. But in that oversoul, we could have hundreds of thousands, if not a million, what we call little Shantias Khans, which are those individual containers that we utilize whenever we're going to incarnate. And actually what I see as being part of that crystalline grid of the earth. And from that comes in the higher self, and then the spiritual aspects, and then that part that attaches to the human form is called the soul. But when we are in our oversoul, there can be, as I said, hundreds of thousands of millions of these little Shantias Khans. So I am way over here on one side of the oversoul, and the original soul to this body was somewhere else. And so even though I was not a future aspect, I was within the oversoul, a resonance. We had a frequency resonance. And because the soul of this body had originally been Arcturian, I had been Arcturian. Those are the aspects that first began to enter into the body so that it did not fry the biology of the body. And so that neurological aspect was able to hold and contain that energy that was coming in. Now, over the last 23 years, of course, I've had more and more of the higher aspects that have come in. And now I predominantly operate with the Andromedan frequency.
Interesting. So how does a person know or come to identify with their oversoul? Like you said, yours was Arcturian and things like that. How do you know what you're resonating with?
Okay. Now that is contained. Those are aspects that are contained within the oversoul, but these are all previous galactic experiences that I had. Now, sometimes people will have systematic remembrances. Sometimes this will happen through different past life regressions. Sometimes it will happen like with work, like a lot of times people will make an appointment with me and I will do a galactic soul reading to let them know where their original aspects originated, what were the primary lifetimes that their guides want them to know about, what was their frequency name, etc. And so there's a lot of ways that people can discover that. For me, the most prominent at this time were the Arcturian, the Palladian, the Andromedan, the Syrian, even the Lyran. I'd been, part of the Christed consciousness. And so all of that actually was kind of interwoven into what I call the Shantias Khan that actually came, because that is kind of like a little cloud storage for all the personal information that we're going to need for this lifetime. And then as we incarnate, we bring with us those aspects we need through the higher self. The higher self attaches to the physical body, and then that becomes the soul, which is the personality of this lifetime. But everything out here, all of these energetic bodies, that's our spirit. But it's all part of our, ultimate, our highest oversoul aspects.
So are there any simple methods that you can recommend that people can try to reconnect with this oversoul or higher aspects of themselves?
Well, sure. I mean, meditation is a fantastic way to do that. And just when you go into meditation, hold the intention that you want to connect in with your higher self. And first connect in with the higher self, because that conduit of energy comes down. You truly are never disconnected from your higher self. You are never disconnected from any layers of yourself. It's just that through life, it is kind of like a little it's like a wire gets disconnected, but yet we're still connected in with everything. And so once you can reconnect all of those little wires, I believe that's where all that remembrance begins to come in. But working with your guides, working with your oversoul, if you work with your oversoul, working with your higher self, these are all ways of being able to access that higher information.
Okay. Cool. Well, that makes sense because I've done that. But, once all of this happened, what was your learning curve like to figure out all of this other spiritual stuff? I'm sure a lot of people want to know, because you can talk about this having gone through it and you rattle off all of this stuff and people are probably, if they're new to this, they're like, oh my God, what? They want to know
Right.
what was the journey in between like. I'm sure it was difficult.
It was very difficult. I came into a marriage where, like I said, within 3 months I had to leave because there was no resonance there. Within another 3 months, I had taken a job in a different state and had moved, and fortunately found my first spiritual teacher. Now, prior to that, I would not have said I was a spiritual person. I was a very religious person. I was very entrenched in religious dogma, and my religious dogma did not allow for spirituality, nor did it allow for thinking outside the box. And so I didn't. And so my little pea brain box was blown wide open with everything that was happening to me, because the only explanation that I had for the voices in my head was, oh gosh, I must be psychotic. The only explanation that I had for seeing things that were not there, hearing things that were not there, knowing things that no one told me was, I must be psychotic, because I had never read even a metaphysical book. I had no foundational knowledge. And so within the first 3 months, my guides were so prevalent in my life. Literally, I mean, I came in being clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient. I had no idea what the clairs were. I didn't even know about clairvoyance. I didn't know you could hear beings from the other side. I didn't know. I mean, yes, I'd read about angels in the Bible, but, you know, that's for the special people. That's not for, you know, everybody ordinary. And so I had no idea what the heck was going on with me, except for I thought I was losing my mind. And so after I left that marriage, things began to calm down a little bit in my life. And I found myself being drawn to bookstores. And, you know, like the first book or two I read was like on, accessing your psychic abilities, because someone I had mentioned to them is like, you know, I keep hearing these voices in my head and I keep seeing these things. And if I listen to them, everything is okay. And it's like, well, that might be a spirit guide. I'm like, what the heck's a spirit guide? I didn't know, you know? And so I went to the bookstore and I did find a book on something about ESP. And I flipped through the book and I was like, I don't know. This might be for me. This might not be for me. But there was something in there that I did see, that I read. There was a paragraph about connecting in with your higher self, and that you could do a meditation and call someone else's higher self, and you could have a conversation with them, and that information would drip that back down into the person. And I always remembered that. So as I started going through the divorce and it was getting really hectic, I would call the ex-husband's higher self to me and have these talks. And lo and behold, every time I did that, something shifted, something changed. So for me, I had to also become a believer in the things. I mean, I knew that I knew what I knew. I didn't know how I knew it. Okay. And so learning to accept and to trust myself, learning that, okay, yes, there are these things that are called, you know, being clairvoyant and clairaudient. Now, as I said, I took another job and I moved to another state. So within the first 6 months, I found my first spiritual teacher totally by accident. Because I was moving to this new location, at that time we didn't have Google like we have it now. So I was picking up the phone directory and I was looking through the back, and there was an ad for a spiritual psychologist. Well, that had my name all over it, because spiritual made me think, oh, okay, you know, that sounds good. And a psychologist, my background was in psychology, so that resonated. And so I felt really good about this. And probably, I don't know if it was the first, but maybe within the second session, she said, honey, I don't believe that you're psychotic. You're not demonstrating any psychosis. You're not, you know, blah, blah, blah. She took me through this big list of things that I wasn't. And I was getting more upset as she told me what I wasn't, because I wanted to know what I was. Honestly, I thought she was going to say, yes, honey, you're certifiable and here's a prescription and don't miss your meds and everything will be okay. And that's not what happened. You know, she introduced me to the concepts of walk-ins, and that totally blew my mind. And it took me quite a while to even be able to wrap my brain around it. And although I understood the concept on the intellectual level, I was not able to accept that as something that was true for me. And that took me a long time to go through and to be able to accept, even though I was living it. And it probably took a good 10 to 12 years to fully accept that and to know that and to be able to live and to breathe that and say, yes, I am a walk-in.
I am so glad that you went into detail on that. And the reason for that is because there is so much programming out there, whether it's the religious programming or new age programming or whatever nonsense is on Instagram these days that kind of, it makes people think that you have this spiritual awakening of some kind. And then suddenly you're talking to all these beings, you're talking to your higher self, and your ego is dead and all these different things. It never made any sense to me when I got into it. And
I didn't have that kind.
Yeah, it can be frustrating. Yeah, it paints an unrealistic picture of spiritual development in the same manner that a movie about a particular character paints an unrealistic version of that person in your mind. Right. You want to live up to these unrealistic things, and you think that it's going to be easy and you can just quit your job and you're going to manifest $10,000 or something. And it gets, there's a lot of stuff you got to do in between there.
Right. Well, I remember, I was doing automatic writing and all kinds of things when I first came in, didn't know what it was. And my spiritual teacher was telling me what it was. I was so compelled to just soak up this newness, to sit and just try to figure out what was going on. I didn't want to go to work. And she's like, honey, you got to go to work. You've got 3 kids. You can't just sit at home and channel all day long. It's like, yeah, but that's what I really want to do. It's not, you can't do that. There's what's called real life. And we're moving into a time, however, where, yes, we have to go to work. Yes, we have to make money. We have to be there at 9 to 5. And if we're not, we'll, blah, blah, blah. These things are going by the wayside because, yes, we are still in that phase where we do work for that monetary exchange. However, people are more and more being able to manifest the life that they want and the money that they need to survive. I'll be honest with you, a lot of time money just appears in my checking account. I don't even know where it came from. I used to call the bank and say, I've got this deposit, and they would track it down. Oh yeah, this is a legitimate deposit and it came from your PayPal, and it did come from my PayPal. I didn't know the person that sent me money, and I would contact them and they're like, this is a gift. And so for me, it was a real struggle getting there. However, I've been a walk-in for 23 years. And for me, I had to raise my family because for me, the kids were, first and foremost. You had to go to the games, you had to do this, you had to do that, had to make sure the lunches were packed and they were at school and blah, blah, blah. You had to do all of those things. But when I had the me time, I wanted to always spend that on dropping deeper and trying to discover who I was. And I did that through listening to some YouTube videos, and I would get into it. And I'm like, this doesn't resonate. Or I would try to read things. Back then, it was very difficult to find a lot about walk-ins. There just wasn't. There was Ruth Montgomery's book, and someone did gift that to me. I never did read it, about being a walk-in. It's almost like my guides had a moratorium on what I could and could not do. And as I said, even to this day, my knowing about walk-ins is my knowing about walk-ins, because I've never read about walk-ins in another book. I don't know what other people think a walk-in is. I only know what I think that it is, what my guides have verified to me. And for me, it's like I have that I know that I know that I know. And people might call it a different thing. We have a lot of different semantics out there that we call things. But the reality of it is, when you take the names away and you look at the outcome, it's all the same.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, because even in my work as well, I try to avoid anybody else's concepts on anything, because it kind of gets in the way of what comes to me through meditation. It's like I try to explain to so many people, especially clients. It's like they're like, you know, so much stuff about the subconscious mind and this and that thing. It's like I didn't learn that anywhere, because like hypnotherapy is something that I know about because I've studied that, but it didn't tell me anything that I really know from meditation. It's like the meditation aspect expanded, and I was able to see all these different layers and things like that. And it's hard for them to swallow that pill. They're like, come on, you just tell me the book you read it in. I want to know. I want to read that book. It's like, no, the book is in here. You have to go inside and pay attention, and if whatever you ask for will be given to you. And I don't want people to think that, you know, you're just going to manifest a bunch of money and stuff like that. But when I really learned to let go, I was living in Pennsylvania. I'm originally from Barbados, where I'm living now, but I lived over there, and that's when I got introduced to spirituality and things like that. And I decided to move back here because intuitively I just was getting this nudge, like it's time to go back to where you're from. And I didn't know how I was going to get along, because everything was kind of topsy-turvy. The government stuff that's not really important, even though people are suffering. And suddenly it was like, oh, well, you know, somebody left you $18,000 in an account. There you go. Like, now you can survive. And I just felt everything was coming together. And I think that one of the blocks that people have with manifesting is they don't understand that you have to be on the right path. You can't be on the wrong path and expect to be provided for. You're going to get more obstacles than you ever even imagined.
Right.
And I think sometimes we get caught up wanting to do the same old things, playing out the same old patterns in different ways. And that becomes problematic for us. And it becomes this barrier between us, the human being, and the spiritual development. And we don't see the opportunities to get involved in those things. I see a lot of that happening right now. And with all this crazy stuff that's happening, I couldn't even tell you all of it. I just don't even want to know most of it.
Right. Well, you know, for me, when I started studying with my teacher, yes, she was the psychologist that I went to see, but she also was of Hopi heritage. And so she had been charged by Chief Dam Eva Hema to take the teachings out to the women. And she had spiritual groups of women that came together, and we were studying shamanism. And truly it was shamanism that rooted me onto this earth, because, you know, I wasn't in my body. I couldn't fully attach to the body yet because there wasn't enough healed there. Even though the mind was immediately healed, it still took, like the neurological system and everything, it took time in order for that healing to occur. But during all of that healing time, I was very blessed because I had shamanism to fall back into. And for me, that's what made the most sense. And I learned to get up and to give my gratitudes every morning. I would call in the energies for the day. At night, I would release them and I would bless everything and, be in my gratitude. And in the east, I would call in the new beginnings for the day. And at noon, then I would call in any type of healing or growth that needed to occur. And then at night, then I would start to release everything before I went to bed. And then right before I'd go to sleep, then I would call in that time of the new beginnings and the endings, what needed to be let go of, what needs to be carried through to the next day. I learned to shamanically travel, and that is truly, I think, what anchored me, because I was able to go into all these different locations, these different worlds, these different planets, and have my guides there with me to explain exactly what was going on. Because honestly, this was probably, 5 years after I became a walk-in. All of a sudden I started being really concerned. It's like, well, did I kick that soul out of the body? What happened to that soul? And I'll be honest with you, I was obsessing about it. It's like, oh my God, am I a bad soul? Is what all these people saying true? You go through all that crap. And my guides, they were just kind of like laughing at me. It's like, what are you talking about? And they explained to me about the pre-birth plan, but they said that was not my case, that this soul was pretty done. It was a sick soul, and that it was physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually sick, and it wanted out of the body. And because I had that resonance factor, I was able to come in because the body was able to be healed. It wasn't like I was in an automobile accident and the back was broken and all of these things. Yes, I had some pretty serious illnesses, but they were all very fixable. Okay. And so, being able to work with them in the way that I was able to work with them really, really helped me. And so if there's anybody out there who's had a spiritual awakening, find a community that you can join so that you don't feel like you're alone. Now, I did start what's called the Galactic Alliance, and you can go to thegalacticalliance.org. And we have meetings that are free to the public on Mondays and on Thursdays that anybody can come and attend. And then we also open it up for people to have questions. And I really try to bring a huge variety of educational people on there so that no matter where you are on your path, you will know for a shadow of a doubt there's somebody out there that can help you, because having a spiritual awakening, thinking that you're going crazy, is not fun. It is not fun. And people are like, oh, I had this spiritual awakening and everything was roses and butterflies. And I'm like, what planet are you from? Because I don't know.
It's a very lonely experience, isn't it?
It can be a very lonely experience. And a lot of people, one of the things that happens is their mind begin to shift and change, and they're no longer in resonance with their friends. So their friends begin to fall away because now they don't have anything to talk about. Maybe they don't want to go out and party like they used to, or they don't want to go do the same things because now you've got a different vibration than you had before. And so you start to lose friends. Your family starts to fall away because a lot of times you don't have multiple family members that's going through a spiritual awakening all at the same time. And so a spiritual awakening can be very lonely, but it doesn't have to be, because there are people out there to offer support.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there.
Yeah.
I mean, I had that experience as well, where it was not only was it lonely, but the friends that I did have that were spiritually aware, they weren't really quite there, and I had to disconnect from them. Life just was kind of like, yeah, you got to get away. They're going to hold you back. It's sad, but it's not a negative thing. I mean, maybe they will get there someday. Who knows? But everybody has to get there on their own time, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's one thing a lot of people are concerned about. It's like, oh my gosh, what if my families don't make the ascension? Well, it's not a race. Okay. And I do want people to know everyone will eventually get there. Okay. Maybe not in this round of the ascension, but everyone will get there. Some people, they just need a little extra 3D time. Some people need a little extra 4D time. Some people need extra 5D time. And the awakening that we're talking about that's happening on the planet right now has more to do with the levels of consciousness as opposed to the physical new earth, which that ascension is occurring as well. But mostly I think what people are talking about is this awakening of consciousness, because you can easily be a sixth dimensional conscious thinker and still, reside on a planet with 5D, 4D, 3D, 2D beings. You can be 4D and reside with lower consciousness, so wherever you are, you can be in a copacetic relationship with all the other consciousnesses. It's when we actually change the vibrational frequency of the body that our bodies begin to shift and that we cannot be seen by lower dimensional beings.
Right. That's I'm so glad you said that. I have a lot of people and it's like I am completely invisible to them. They just I could be like, and they wouldn't see me, literally. Yes. And my body has changed so much. Like I've just lost a bunch of weight over the years, and what else? My body rejects certain foods. If I eat meat, I'll get violently ill. I can't be near too much sugar or caffeine, or I just won't feel very well. There's a lot of stuff out there that and if you drink water and stuff and it's not clean energetically, you feel heavy. You feel affected by it. It makes your stomach hurt, all kinds of strange things. So I don't think that there's enough talk about these different changes and stuff. And I tend to be very annoying about don't eat this thing, don't drink that thing, stay away from alcohol as much as you can, stay away from caffeine as much as you can, don't eat chocolate because there's hidden ingredients in chocolate, all these different foods, because a lot of people are saying that when they consume these things, they don't feel well. And I'm saying, well, that's why. If you're trying to change your vibration, because we all are growing naturally, as you said, over time, it's almost like we're being magnetized towards these newer frequencies. If you're getting ill and you're eating your regular diet, something's going on, right? Like these things aren't serving you anymore. Yes, they're delicious and addictive because they're delicious, or for other reasons. You gotta do the work around that to let that go. And I got a couple more questions for you.
Okay.
I think the next question I want to ask is, can you explain what the New Earth really is? I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what that is, and a lot of people haven't read Dolores Cannon's work, but they've seen it on Instagram and they're making assumptions.
Okay. Well, I'll be honest. I haven't read all of Dolores. I'm a practitioner, but I have not read all of her books. I've listened to some. I've listened to excerpts or looked through books. But to say exactly what Dolores's concept is, I don't know. But what I can tell you is the concept that my guides... Mm-hmm. Yeah, that my guides have given to me. And you have to realize that if my concept is different than your concept and our concept is different than someone else's, that doesn't make us right and them wrong, or me right and you wrong, or you right and me wrong, because the information's coming to us from the level of the guides that we work with. Okay? So it's coming from their... that's where I get my information. So that's, whoever's given me the information, it's the way they're perceiving what's happening as well. So the way I was told is back in 2012, if this is the Earth, when that massive wave of photonic energy hit the planet, one of the things that began to happen is Gaia's etheric body began to separate. And as her body began to separate and it began to move and move, then we moved into that part we call the Vesica Pisces, with that the womb of creation being in the middle. It's like at the very beginning of all things when there's source and then consciousness comes into play. Source decides it's going to begin to expand. This mitosis begins to happen. And so that's the same thing that happened with Gaia. This mitosis began to occur. Now, first off, we're talking about two different beings here on the planet. First, we're talking about Terra, the earth. We're talking about Mother Nature, Terra. But then Gaia, being an eighth density sentient being, placed her consciousness into this planet for the experience. Now, we have 3D consciousness right now, or 4D, 5D, whatever level that the consciousness is, that's in this vehicle. Well, her vehicle of choice was the earth because she was vibrating at a much higher density. Gaia herself is the one that's going through the ascension process. Humanity is going through a resonance with Gaia because we are entangled within her electromagnetic field. So as things affect Gaia, they begin to affect humanity. And as Gaia's consciousness raises, those individuals whose body are clean, whose minds are clean, who can hold these higher light code frequencies are also raising as Gaia raises. That's why you can be invisible to some people, because you're still functioning as a higher density being, not just a higher consciousness being, okay? So Gaia is moving into a different density. Humanity is moving into a different density with her. And in order to do that, we have to have clean body, mind, and spirit. Those people who make this leap, they're going to be all kinds of different consciousness ranges, okay? Some people could still be a 3D conscious, and they still move into the new earth. Because 4D consciousness, actually, I have to take that back. Also in 2012, one of the things that happened is everyone moved into fourth density, into that 4D consciousness, okay? And it's in that 4D consciousness that people began to learn what it was like to release, to let go of all the old 3D stuff, okay? And so if people are in this 4D consciousness and still working on 3D stuff, it's still very likely that they can go ahead and transition as Gaia makes her transition. Now, there's a couple different thoughts with that. First off, there will be a number of the population that stay on Terra and they go through, and that noise, guys, it's my little love bunny here, my little puppy. So what will happen is there will be people who go through all the earth changes. There will be some people who go with the new earth, and there will be other individuals who are transported to another 3D-like or 4D-like planet so that they can live out the remainder of their existence. And if for them it's going to be they went to bed and they woke up, things will be a little different. They may or may not notice. People will be gone. They may or may not notice. I haven't gotten the download on that yet, but from what I do know is that we're all going to make a transition. And so this new earth, in my opinion, is the etheric body of Gaia that has risen to a new level. It has to shake off this old 3D rock formation. So it's that spiritual essence that's actually rising and moving. And as we move with it, we don't have to have the physical bodies exactly the way we have them, although we will look very much like we do now. We're going to be in a higher density form living on a new earth, which is a double to this planet, only there's no war. Only there's no sickness, you know, everything is at a much higher level.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. So I got to ask you, are you seeing a lot of sick souls at this time in your work?
I see a lot of people who are confused. I see a lot of people who think that they're lost. No one's lost. You have to be disconnected in order to be lost. We're all connected. We're all part of the overall one spirit. It is a matter of disconnection of our thought processes. Okay? And so it is impossible for us not to be all connected. It is impossible for that to happen. And it is impossible for us to say, oh, I would never be able to be part of my 12th dimensional thought processes. Well, that's not true. You already are that. You just have to change your thinking. It's a perception. Dimensions are nothing more than perceptions. Densities, however, are the weight of something, how dense something is. But a dimension, it's just your thought process. So if you keep changing your processes enough, it's going to lock into place at these higher processes. And so when people are coming to me and they're confused, or they say, they feel lost, they don't know what to do, immediately I start turning them inward. And I have a process of questioning that I go through with them that helps them understand they're already perfect and divine exactly the way they are.
Awesome. So what's your message for humankind right now?
I would have to tell people that you are loved more than you could ever imagine, and that we are all going to be ascending, some of us quicker than others. There's no way we can be lost. And I can guarantee you, because having come from the other side, there is a string of souls lined up to inhabit a human body. And if you are here right now on this planet, you are here because you hold a specific vibration that no one else is holding, and it is necessary in order for Gaia to be able to raise her consciousness, in order for humanity. You may not feel like it. You may say, well, I don't know where that is, but I can guarantee you, if you're on the planet right now, that you're holding a very special piece of this whole ascension pie.
Sheila, where can we find you?
You can go to my website at sheilaseppi.com. You also can check out my marketing component. It is the consciousawakeningnetwork.org. And you can find that on YouTube. We're on Amazon. We're on Roku. We're on a whole plethora of different platforms in order to be able to bring conscious programming to people. And if you're looking for community, then you can join the galacticalliance.org. But if you go to my website, and if you're interested in the Oversouls, on the home page, it'll say special offer. Type in the word Oversoul, one word, capital O, Oversoul, special offer. And the chart that I use with my students will pop up. And then the other thing is, if you sign up to be on our mailing list, to be on my mailing list, I'll send to you free of charge the first chapter of my book about walk-ins.
Awesome. Sheila, thanks for being on the Boundless Authenticity podcast.
Thank you for having me. It was really fun.
Absolutely.
You're listening to the Boundless Authenticity podcast, where we discuss everything related to the evolution of human consciousness.
At the very least, people need to understand that the United States builds bunkers, which are basically cities underground, every 3 months.
Basically, when you dream, you tap into your subconscious. It is your nocturnal intuition, your creativity and imagination unchained from conscious reason, ego and logic.
They're biologically alive, but they have no soul. They have AI consciousness. They can alter your consciousness to the brain to get in the brain.
We live in a multidimensional reality, whether it comes through esoteric information in the spiritual realms, or the UFO people, experiencers, or mainstream through quantum physics and through mainstream science now realizing that parallel parallel dimensions probably exist.
We're all spiritual beings. We're all having these human experiences. We've heard that phrase over and over and over. But what does that really mean? You know, all the big questions of life, we have these answers inside of our souls.
We're ultimately studying the nature of what it is to be human, good and evil, our psychology, how we think, and our health. That's why I love Bruce Lee's great quote, all knowledge is ultimately self-knowledge.
The Boundless Authenticity Podcast.